Hey guys, Ice Hockey Aussies here for another week of Power Rankings. Now, we did miss last week's and we apologize for that. I actually had a family emergency which took up a good week of my time. So we do apologize for not getting a video out last week, but we are back for regular viewing schedule and hopefully we will be that way for the rest of the year. So yeah, without further ado, to get us started for this week's rankings, I have at pick 32 the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Okay, so you don't move on yours, and just having a look where I've got them. I've got them at 31. There they are.
Yeah, I know the Sharks have been bad, and I almost wanted to make the swap. Um, but at the same time, Columbus haven't really done anything either.
Yeah,
So
I was just higher on
it was
Columbus last week.
hard.
That was literally it.
e- Exactly, because I teetered with it because like I had them at 30, I had them at 31, and then I had them at 30. Like I was teetering with it because I was like, well, Sharks have been pretty bad, but Columbus just haven't been any better. So it's very hard to sort of make that. I think you're probably seeing the two worst teams in the league at the moment. I just feel like, teams like Chicago, Anaheim, all the rest of them above, they're getting a lot more wins. I know San Jose are still in the race and
Mm.
uh, because of their overtime
Well,
losses,
well, I'll
but
fill in San Jose
yeah,
because you're talking about them. They're my 32, and
I
yeah,
figured
like
you'd
I,
have them
I,
there
I think
still.
the only thing, like you said, they're basically equal bad. The only thing they versus each other this week, Columbus won in OT. Like if you ever want to rank it on that. But no, mine was completely bit just because Columbus was higher for me prior, and so I couldn't like the Sharks didn't show anything for me to make that switch, and same goes for you. So
Yeah,
that's
well, exactly. Like,
mm,
I think out of the last 7 games that Columbus have played, the San Jose game's the only game they've won.
yep,
And it's really the only game they've even been close to. Um, so yeah, it was just tough. It's just tough. If you wanted to get much worse than these two teams, I don't think you really could at this point. Um, so
yeah,
yeah, I definitely think they both deserve to be equal bottom at this point.
yeah. I definitely think Columbus have the better roster on paper, but it's just not coming to fruition on the ice. But I guess
Right.
n- now
Yeah.
we're going through my pick. I
Yeah.
guess you can go to 30 unless you have something else to say.
Oh, I think injuries have plagued Columbus, so I would be interested to see how they go next year, but it has been an absolute disgraceful year for them. All right, on to P30. Phew, a team that has just, after having a good run there for a bit where they weren't expected, they've sort of fallen down to where we sort of expected they would with the Caulfield injury. It's the Montreal Canadiens.
Oh, you went big on him. So did I. Um, a little bit less big on you because you're a little bit higher on him last time. But yeah, well, what can you say? Just falling from grace. I think crashing is what you want to do at this point for a team like this team. But like yeah, they've only got one line, and then you go and injure that line or break it up in a sense, and then they basically don't have a team, which is which is a little bit sad, isn't it? So
Mm,
it like they are where you would expect them to be, and I guess that is the good thing. And I, nothing else really for the season for them. Really, the only worrying thing is like how much cap space they use for such a horrible team.
yeah, well, I mean, I think that carry price contract really hurts them, obviously. But yeah, I mean, look, kind of all expected that that's where Montreal would be. If they can get a decent draft pick, they've also got Florida's first round this year as well. So, they're still in rebuild phase. They obviously need to get the likes of Brandon Gallagher, although I don't know how you're going to get that contract off your books. And then the Carey Price one as well. So yeah, they've got a bit of cap there that's just going to
Yeah,
give
and they
them
got
a bit
Hoffman
of
that they could
trouble.
move. I'm not surprised they didn't move. I know his market wouldn't have been huge, but I think that was a big downer for me as well, as they didn't move off Hoffman.
Yeah, they get the money back from Jerome. I thought that was that yeah their deadline sort of thing was pretty disappointing, given that they had Jonathan Drouin and Hoffman to move. I guess they just didn't have any real takers for either of those players. But yeah, it was surprising to see that they weren't moved on, for whatever they could get basically. But it is what it is. My biggest scare for them at the moment is he conceded so many goals this week. 26 goals. 26 goals. Holy crap. That is too many goals. That's 6.5 goals a game. It's wow. But yeah, so it's not looking great for Montreal at the moment, but it's I mean, you may as well keep falling because it betters your chances of getting Bedard. So yeah,
Alrighty. I guess we'll move on to a team in the Metro and the Philadelphia Flyers. They stay at 29 for me. Not a
I've
great
got him at
team.
28.
Oh, a little bit higher than I would have thought. Yeah, I'm just not high on them. They didn't have a good record this past 2 weeks in regards to going to 2-5 out of 7. So yeah, I don't like it. I don't rate it. They lose some pretty games by heavy margins. Conceding 5 goals a lot of the time or something like and stuff like that. And I just there's nothing I've seen that I could move on them higher.
Yeah, I mean, look, the loss against Carolina was a bit rough today, but they beat Buffalo and then they come up against Carolina in a back-to-back and they showed a lot. And realistically, it was just a brain fade, I think, like they looked like they thought they had it in the bag and then the puck ends up in the back of the net with a second to go. So yeah, I don't know. I thought they pushed all the teams they faced this week and they faced some pretty tough opponents. So yeah, to me they climbed that one spot.
Alrighty, fair enough. On to
All right,
yours.
at my 29, I've got the Chicago Blackhawks just climbing
Okay,
up the one spot.
they are my 28. Moving up 3 for me.
You moved quite highly on these guys.
Oh yeah, big Chicago fan here. Nah, just a
It's
decent
it's
week.
the Boston win. It's the
Eh,
Boston win.
don't you read me like that? How do you? No, they had a really good win the start of last week in regards to beating Ottawa 5-0, which I thought was commendable. Um, Disappointing they lost to Detroit, um, but then they get an OT loss against Florida, and then yeah, like you said, it was the Boston game that really ticked that book, and just made me make that move above Philly. And they also beat
Yeah.
Nashville, which gets a little bit underspoken in regulation as well. So two really good wins there.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say the Ottawa game. They were playing against a Swiss cheese goalie. Uh, they were
Okay,
basically scoring on every shot that they put on net. But
but did they have any
yeah,
forwards to score
still a good.
goals? like.
No. That just shows you how bad this goal was. But yeah, no, look, I agree with you. Two big wins there, the 5-0, and then obviously Boston 6-3 and Nashville as well, which is a good win. Because Nashville, I think, is surprising just about everyone, thinking that they weren't going to even be close to competing, and somehow they are. So yeah, two good wins this week. I can fully understand why you had them at 28.
Alrighty. Without a further ado, then it's on to you. I believe, or is it my pick? My pick.
Nah, it's your
Alrighty.
pick. Your pick.
27. I have Anaheim Ducks. Um, just chilling where they were
Yeah.
last week for me.
Yeah, same with me. I was wondering if you were going to punish a team a little bit further, but yeah,
Nah, I did. There wasn't enough for me to punish on. Like all these teams down here aren't great. Let's be real. But they did
yeah,
scrape some points, like getting an OT game against Vancouver. They OT game against Nashville. You're beating the Jackets. Was it 7-4? Like there just wasn't enough, and they beat Calgary as well. So I feel like it was a commendable week. It's kind of just below 500, so nothing for me to punish on.
no, that's fair. No, I thought they did reasonably well for where they are. But yeah, I had to agree with you. Like I can't push them above any of these teams that are coming. I think you bottom six. I don't think there's too many other teams that we'll see in this bottom six over the next 3 weeks. I think this is pretty set. Um, it would have to be a pretty big fall from grace. I know a lot of people are going to think about the likes of maybe an Arizona, but I think Arizona all year have shown some real grit um, compared to probably these six teams down here.
Yeah, I think some people's power rankings throughout the NHL have been pretty bad when it comes to Arizona. Very underrating them and their compete level all year.
I think everyone's just surprised
Mm.
that you're seeing this from them. But anyway, we'll move on to 26. I've got the Detroit Red Wings.
Alrighty.
Just
Same place for me.
yeah, they're just look, Yzerman made it pretty obvious that they weren't going to compete for playoffs this year, and sold sold a few players at the deadline, and they've just sort of gone backwards ever since. So
do,
not surprising.
do you investigate them for tanking because they just flick the switch so quickly? Like,
Well, the craziest thing is 2 days before deadline they were in the playoffs. Like
mm, yep.
it's
And then
it's a
they,
pretty
yep.
fucking big fall from grace, right? Like they've gone from in in the playoffs to 9 points out of playoffs and heading towards the lower end of the table.
Like,
So yeah,
yeah, like they're
yeah, it's
below
interesting.
Arizona in our power rankings, right next to Anaheim. Like, yeah, like I
Y-
don't know. I know it's not like that, but I don't know if you've got ever a case for a team tanking, that would be it. This would be this team.
I, I'm not, yeah, like you've got a fair point there because it was like flicking a light switch on, right? Like, hey, we're in the playoffs. Do you know what? I don't feel like we're good enough this year. Bang, just see you later. Oh God.
Alrighty. I guess we'll move on to 25. Team that's just been pretty much around this mark all season. It's St. Louis Blues.
A team that we probably didn't expect to be around this mark all year.
I,
But yeah,
I'd,
I've got
I'd
them there
say
as well.
probably, yeah, with Detroit and probably Columbus. This is probably one of the most disappointing teams that we've gone through so far. And where they are to where they should have been. And
Yeah, 100%.
yeah,
Yeah. I don't think Detroit were a disappointment this year. I think they've been pretty good
oh, I
around
just mean in
where I
regards to
expected them.
rankings, like where they are in our rankings
Oh yeah.
right now. Like I was expecting them to be about 18, 20 all season, but obviously
Yeah.
that's where they were. Then they tanked. But yeah, in regards to St. Louis, there was some big losses in regards like an 8-5 against the Wild, 5-3 against Vegas. They do beat Washington. They've just always kind of won the games they should and lose the games they should. There's no too many surprises there. They lose to Arizona, they beat the Sharks, and they beat Columbus. So they did everything that you'd expect.
Mm.
There's
I feel like
no
that's
surprises.
yeah, I feel like that's all they've been capable of this year. They can beat the lower ranked teams, but as soon as it comes to anyone of note, they collapse. I feel like you can go over most of them. They've upset a couple of teams here and there throughout the year, but it's been few and far between. Um, I know they've got the Devils number, so maybe if they played the Devils every game of the year, they'd make playoffs. Um, but yeah, it's been a very disappointing year for St. Louis fans. So yeah. All right, moving on to 24. I've got the Washington Capitals.
Alrighty. 24 for me also is the Washington Capitals. Another team that should not have been this low, in regards to where they would have been at the start of the year. But what do you say? 2 wins in the last six, past 2 weeks, and they beat Islanders. Shootout loss to the Devils, and their if I just get it here, their last win was against the Sabres in shootout. So yeah, just fall from grace really. There's not, like, we've already covered it in previous videos. It's just they're just not competing hard enough. Like, they're there, but they're not there that you'd expect the Capitals logo to be.
Yeah, also like, they had a lot of they've had a pretty injury plagued season. So I'm not overly surprised that it's gone this way for them. Um, Not to mention the players they traded out at the deadline. You, yeah, okay, they might not have been they're superstars. I mean, Dmitry Orlov, pretty reasonable player. Johansson's a reasonable player. Like, but they were still players that probably pushed them above some of these other teams. So yeah, I'm not surprised that Washington have fallen down this far, just given how strong the Metro is. Like,
Mm.
you look at their team compared to the likes of Carolina, New Jersey, New York Island, like Rangers, Islanders, Pittsburgh. It doesn't surprise me. Like, I look
No,
at the Capitals and I go,
I
yeah,
just
you
I
probably
just think
are
it
the sixth
surprises
ranked
me on
side.
how much they've fallen. I thought they would have been like in that wild card hunt a little bit stronger. Like, when you cover the injury prone stuff, like, you're right, and that was always the concern when you have 30 plus players all around your team, and some of
Yeah.
them with, like, injury history. So that was always going to be the case. It just surprises me how quickly they've fallen, and they've definitely hit into that retool rebuild era. Um, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, they're not going to go for a full rebuild whilst Alex Ovechkin's still around, but they'll definitely have to do something if they want to be relevant anytime soon.
Alrighty, on to 23. Team we mentioned earlier, the Arizona Coyotes,
Hey,
plus 5.
absolute workhorses, this team, aren't they?
Well, they finally got the
they've got
results they
no right
deserve.
being
Mm,
there. Oh, exactly, but they've got no right being where they are. Like, I just, by all means, with everything going on with this franchise, they should have been a just stone cold 32. It should have been I'm surprised they won 20 games this year,
yeah,
but
yeah.
they
Like,
just
you look at on roster and you're like, ooh, ouch. Are they even going to
exactly.
compete? But I guess, like, they still do have players like Clayton Keller. And when you have, skilled players like that, they can make at least a line shine. Kind of like the Montreal. Get at least one line going, you get something going. But they've
True.
just gotten a lot of compete from the lower end, and it shows that we don't need to be the most skillful bunch, and that's why people need to stop hyping up players like McDavid and stuff. People are just, like, so skillful because they're not what you need all the time. Sometimes you just need that, like, grindy grit that plays that 200-foot game that will win you that puck along the board, and that's what this team does.
Yeah, because right, like once you get to playoffs, skills are great, but playoffs are a much more physical and grueling sort of game of hockey, like compared to normal. So yeah, you're right. Like skills are great, but when it comes to playoffs, yeah, you still want those skillful players to do those things, but you need those grinders. You need those players who can put physical hits on, who can wear down the opponents, who can stand up to physical hits being put on them as well, right? Because if you might have a skillful player, but the second they get hit one or two times, which is going to happen, against the best teams because that's what they're going to do. They're going to target your best players. All of a sudden, that's it. The skillful smaller players that they're grinded into the ground and they can't do anything. But
Mm,
yeah, they've had a really good season, and I just I know the stadium's a big talking point, but they're going to get a new one. And I just hope that they can turn it around because I would love to just see
yeah.
all of a sudden hockey doing well in
They're
Arizona.
one of my favorite
Would
underdog
be great.
teams, and they had one of my favorite logos until they changed it. And that was a big disappointment for me was their logo. Just a question for you: was Chikrin the problem? You know, turning it up this week. You know, win six, lose the other two, and OT. Was Chikrin the problem? Now that they've turned it on.
No, no, I don't think so. I don't think he was. Because you got to remember when Chikrin was playing, he was still playing really well, and Arizona were actually playing quite well as well. Like they weren't playing terribly. They just weren't getting results a lot of the time. Um, One of the things I think it was Soderstrom said for them is one of the things that he's liking at the moment is they're getting a chance. Some of the younger players, because of the players that have been moved out of their team, they're actually getting a chance to come up and show what they can do. Because I think, yeah, Soderstrom's played 18 games now, and he was interviewed and just asked how he's feeling about all
Mm.
this, everything that's happening, and he said it's great because some of the young players they're getting a chance, and it's like, well, if you play well, you're going to stay up.
Yeah.
Like you don't have this out and out superstar that's going to just take your spot from you at this point. So they do. They've got apparently they've got a bunch of young players who are just super hyped to try and prove what they can do at the NHL level,
Well,
which sometimes that's where you find gems.
yeah. Well, my other point with that would be, I know we're harping on them for a little while, but it's interesting that they're basically playing playoff hockey because you got such young kids trying to vie for NHL spots. They're basically playing NHL playoff hockey. They're playing like they're hard compete. They got nothing to lose. They got everything to show to be able to get that stable contract. Whereas other teams, like a Chikrin and stuff, they're not, playing that playoff hockey because they're not fighting for their position. Like they might be fighting for a better contract for more money, but they're not fighting to be in the NHL. And I feel like that's why you get these type of scenarios. Same thing happened with Toronto with their defense when they got the injuries or these people came up and then they started playing better defensively. It's just people
We
that
spoke about
yeah,
Yeah, we spoke about how who knew all Toronto needed to get a better defense was to knock out their top four.
yeah. So and it's just because
Yeah,
they
no, that's
compete
right.
harder for their role. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, yeah, we should probably move on from
Yep.
Arizona, but out there, Arizona doing well. Um, yeah. All right. On to 22. I've got the Vancouver Canucks
Alrighty.
moving up in the world at the moment.
Yeah,
They're
it's where I got
playing
them
some
as well.
good hockey.
It looks like you were a bit lower on them last time than I was, but yeah, they're playing really good hockey. Pedersen's playing amazing. There's a lot to love about what they're doing. It's just too too little, too late, in a sense. And look, hopefully it's signs for next year and how they get things going. I don't think it is personally, but I do like the way I'm seeing players like Pedersen and whatnot play.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I like as well is that they got Kuzmenko signed,
Mm,
right? Like, oh, the guy the guy was literally allowed to walk. He was UFA. He could have just walked into any other team after the season he's had, and he chooses to sign with Vancouver. Like that was just a really good sign for me. I thought, that was some great news for Vancouver and for Vancouver fans. Um, can I see them turning it around next year? No, probably not. Sorry, Vancouver fans. I think you need a few more pieces. I think they it's going to be probably another 2 or 3 years of reshuffling and see what management can do. But hey, they're playing some reasonable hockey. They're getting some good good stuff out of certain players. Bavillier from the Bo Horvat trade, 16 points in 19 games. I mean, this guy keeps it up, he's gonna net you some really good assets come deadline day next year.
Mm,
And all in all, you're gonna absolutely kill that Bo Horvat trade. Um, so yeah, look, I think they can fix things in Vancouver. I think it's going to take 2 or 3 years. They're going to need to sort of move
yeah.
around some players and some assets
Well,
and
they could.
probably fix up management.
Yeah. Sure. I don't think they will fix up management after what they've done, but yeah, they're still going to move on players like Brock Besser, maybe Miller if they ever move him on. Um, yeah, the Kuzmenko signing was great, and it does solidify their kind of retooling. But they definitely do need to add a little bit more free agency and trades next year, and hopefully they
Yeah,
get a
for sure.
they get a better Demko next year as well. Um, on to 21 team falling from grace. I got the Buffalo Sabres. This
Oh,
is a big one. -8. Yeah, they've
yeah,
just
I've got them -8 as well, but I'm one higher than you.
okay. Yeah,
20.
yeah, just a big fall. Just not doing what they were doing beforehand to get them into this playoff hunt. And what really hurt me in looking at this team was the Dallas game, conceding 10 goals. It's just
Hmm.
you can't do that if you want to play playoffs. Like if you're gonna lose, you got to lose by a goal or two. You can't concede 10. Um, like honestly, there's honestly probably no excuses for that besides basically both your goalies get injured and your third string backup, nobody hops in for that game. But yeah, so that's what my big disappointing take was conceding 10.
Oh, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more on that because, and not to mention, they concede 10 against Dallas, and yeah, Dallas great team, good offense, all the rest of that, and you're like, okay, cool. Well, surely they will, fix that defensive lapse and all the rest of it. Oh no, they concede 5 against Washington, or they concede 5 against Philly. Actually, I think that was a shootout loss, but still 4 against Washington and 5 against Philadelphia.
Yep.
Like it's just they're two teams that you shouldn't be losing to in the first place, and they're two teams that you shouldn't be conceding 9 goals against. Like, yeah, it's a worry because for a moment there, they were looking like they were going to be the team to take the wild card spot. And people were saying, well, the damage that they could do. I thought the damage they could do in the playoffs if they make it. But this defense is just, yeah, and it doesn't get any easier for them. They come up against Boston, Nashville, New Jersey, and New York Islanders this week. Does not get any easier. If you're conceding 5 against Philly, how many are you going to concede against Boston? Because Boston put 7 against them 2, 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
it's going to
it's
be rough.
basically their season's on the line this coming week, and they're kind of what a point behind Washington with 2 games in hand. They're in point in front of Ottawa with 1 game in hand. Like they're now 5 points behind Florida for the wild card spot, and Florida is not even in the wild card spot, and they're a game behind. So, game in hand. Sorry. So, like they're it's really coming down to this next week. If they can't beat these top teams, then their season's basically done.
100%.
Alrighty
All
then.
right, moving on to 21. Well, we were just talking about one team that's fallen off the face of the earth. We may as well talk about the other team falling off the face of the earth. The two teams that we thought 2 weeks ago were going to be the wild card favorites have just completely shat the bed. I don't know what the hell has happened to both of these teams, but I got the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, I've got them at 20, and you're right. They've both just fallen off the earth. I don't even understand how they finally got the D man they needed, and they've done the complete opposite. Like I said, maybe Chikrin is the problem.
Yeah.
Going by what Ottawa's done and what Arizona's done, but um,
Yeah.
I don't know if
Did
you're
we
a sc-
hype them up too much? Like, did we hype them up too much, man? Like, I don't even know what to say. Like, both of these teams before the last 2 weeks were sitting cherry ripe in like they were going to be wild card. They had all the games in hand. They had all this. It was just right there for them. They didn't even have to win all their games in hand. They just had to win a couple of them,
Mm,
but they didn't win any of them basically. So it's just
yeah,
like, yeah.
my big issue with this one is I think the least amount of goals they conceded over their 7 games was 4 goals. It was either between 4 to 6
Mhm.
goals
It
all
was
2 weeks.
it was 4 goals. It was
Yeah.
4 goals, and that was the only game they won.
Yep. And they get shut out 5-0 against Chicago. Like, yeah, there's just a lot of things, wheels falling off the wagon there. You can't keep conceding that, and that's surprising when you get the defender you needed in the trade deadline.
Look, I think one of the issues is that they're playing with Sogard, and he's basically a glorified backup
Yeah, but
goaltender
but
at
if you,
this point.
I guess it's their fault for not shoring up that position in trade deadline. If you wanted to really push for it, then that's like they had the cap space. I don't. They didn't really have too many assets to trade for it, but that's what they could have gone through and done.
Yeah, yeah, it's yeah. Unfortunately, I think yeah, you've got Talbot who's out injured, and um, yeah, they just don't have a backup,
Yeah, Forsberg,
and
Talbot.
for Forsberg's out as well, I believe, and yeah, it's just I guess that's what happens, if I mean, we saw it to New Jersey last year where they're playing with their backup goaltenders, and both of their backup goaltenders were fresh. It was Nico
Mm,
Dawes and Akira Schmid. You know, so they hadn't even seen NHL. They shouldn't have seen NHL for like two more years, and they were thrown in the deep end, and you know, you just it just doesn't work. So yeah, it's disappointing because they did look good for a bit there. They looked like they were, but it's pretty much dead in the water at this point.
alrighty. On to 19. I have the team called the Calgary Flames. Moving up 2 positions for me.
Yeah, I got them there as well.
Yeah. I don't know. They've just been around this point for a long time now. They hit this fluctuate just between somewhere around 18 to 22, and that's been where they've been. And like I feel like they were turning on hot, no puns intended. But then it's just some results, like the one losing to Anaheim Ducks at the first week. It's like you can't have that happen if you're really pushing for this playoff hunt. And then the OT loss against Arizona. I know Arizona turned it up, was a little bit hard to take as well. They didn't have a
Mm,
terrible week, so it's and that's why that if they win 4, lose 3, so it's a good week. But I would have just liked to seen the Anaheim week game go in their favor, get that really good week that they've needed because they've always been just above good or just below good, hitting that 500 mark. And I would have just liked to seen a really good week for them for once.
yeah. Yeah, I think we said this a lot throughout the year where it's they'll either be 500 in the week or they'll be 500 over the 2 week period where, they might have one where they win 2 games and lose one, but then the very next week they'll lose two and win one. And it's just, it is, you're right. I checked historical rankings. I have had them from 16th to basically 21st, fluctuating between that since week 3. They've gone from those 5 positions and just fluctuated. They
Yeah,
haven't been able to really, yeah, grasp a hold of anything all year.
yeah, exactly. I'm looking at mine. Mine are pretty similar, just a little bit more fluctuation, but very similar. And they just really after week 3, they just really haven't moved from this area, and that's just been the season all summed up. Really, it's just going 500, and unfortunately, you kind of got to go a little bit better than 500 to get the playoffs.
Yeah, and look, they aren't too far away from that playoff spot. But to get there, they're going to need to do more than they have all season. They're going to actually need to go, on a in the last 12 games, they're going to need to win probably 8 of their last 12. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting for them. I personally don't think they'll do it. I surprisingly think Nashville are probably better suited to do it than Calgary at this point, but yeah, they've got the firepower, they've got the team to do it. I don't know what's wrong. They just they can't sustain, good hockey for more than a week. And
Yep.
that's been their biggest problem all year.
Yeah. 100% guaranteed.
All right, moving on to P18. Now a team that well, is the team that Calgary are chasing really at the moment. Um, they've pulled it back after falling completely off, but yeah, Winnipeg Jets moving up just the one position for me.
Yeah, look, I've got them in 18 as well. Looks like we got a little run of the same teams gonna start here, but yeah, it's just
Oh yeah,
disappointing where they are.
it's well, considering where they were, I think that's the part that's got me so bad, and not to mention their wins. Like they've got 8 more wins than Calgary, 8 more wins, but they're only 4 points ahead. So it's like that's yeah, they've had a good year, but it's just come down to the fact that they can't win in overtime, or they can't take games to overtime when they lose. So
Yeah, that is the
yeah,
big problem. They've always had over the past few seasons issues with that, defense. Um, didn't look like it really got addressed during the trade deadline. It would be a shame with how their season started to see them not make the playoffs. I feel like they are a playoff worthy team, but honestly, 12 games left, 4 points above Calgary, um, only five above Nashville, but Nashville have 3 games in hand. It's going to be a very tight race. Basically, it will be down to the last week, especially if they continue this trend of just going slightly below 500 or being 500.
yeah. I mean, they're definitely no shoe in for playoffs at this point, and I think a month ago we wouldn't. Don't think we would have been saying that a month ago. We were pretty set that Winnipeg, yeah, probably pencil them in for a playoff spot. And all of a sudden, we're talking about the potential of either Calgary or Nashville sort of kicking them out. So,
Mm,
yeah, it's been one hell of a fall from grace from them. Um, the one thing I can see is if you look at the teams that they've got in their last sort of 12 games, they play Arizona, Anaheim, St. Louis, San Jose, Detroit, San Jose again. Like they've got a couple of tough games, but you look at what 6 of those 12 are teams at the real low end of the table that they should beat pretty easily.
yeah,
So yeah.
especially if you want to make the playoffs. On to
Oh,
seven.
if
Yeah.
they lose them, I'm sorry. If they lose to those teams, they don't deserve to win to be in the playoffs
Well,
at
if they
this
lose to
point.
them and beat the others, just do the complete wrong thing.
Well, I guess the one thing you can say on that is at least they're beating playoff teams. Far
Alrighty.
out.
On to 17. Team that we've talked about just now in that little hunt is Nashville for me.
Oh, I was wondering if you'd have them in your top 16 or not. I have also taken them out of mine, and they are in the same spot, 17.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was very interested to see what you do with your 16 and if you would move them out.
Mm.
They're not far from it. Obviously, they're in this hunt with Winnipeg and Calgary for that wild card spot. Um, I feel like they shouldn't be competing as well as they are in regards to becoming sellers at the deadline, and then they're still competing and getting wins. And look, they beat not the best of teams, Anaheim, Detroit. They go to OT against Winnipeg, losing that valuable point. But big loss against Chicago. is probably the biggest downside that I've seen. And they had
Yeah.
a pretty easy schedule. Um, and they only go 3-4, which is very disappointing for me. I feel like with this schedule, they probably should have went 5-2. Um, in regards to it, 5 wins, 2 losses, and so a little worrying there. That's why they move out my top 16.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, they beat the Kings, which was the one that you could probably expect them to lose, but they lose to Chicago, Arizona, and Vancouver, albeit they pick up a point against Vancouver. So yeah, that is what worries me because unlike the Jets, their run home, they've got 15 games. They have one team in the bottom end of the standings, and that's St. Louis. Every other team is pretty much playoff bound. They've got the Rangers, Kraken, Toronto, Boston, Pittsburgh, Dallas, Vegas, Carolina, and Winnipeg themselves, Minnesota, and Colorado. So all I can say there, Nashville fans, is if you guys make the playoffs, far out, you deserve to make the playoffs.
Yeah, well,
That is one hell of a run home.
it's not promising after the week they had against the easier targets, though, is it? That's the problem.
No, it's not. But, you know, you wouldn't want a better run into the playoffs, right? Because they would be so, if they make the playoffs after that run home, it's just the best playoff prep you're going to get. Like you're playing nothing but playoff teams and fighting for your playoff spot. So yeah, it's a huge test. I don't expect they'll get it done, but yeah, who knows? It'll be interesting.
Mm. Alrighty, starting the top
All
16.
right. Starting the top 16. All right. And this is basically our playoff teams at this point, besides the fact that I think we've got one more. Yeah, we do. We have one more Eastern team than West team, but that's to be expected. P16, I've got the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, this is actually my team to miss out of the playoffs at the moment because this is my ninth ranked Eastern team.
Yep.
Yeah, which surprises the hell out of me because, yeah, I can't imagine the Penguins not being in the playoffs, to be honest with you. I think that's just
Yeah.
insanity.
I feel I feel like they make it, they scrape it in. But they're definitely on the cusp of losing this, big streak they've had over all these years, or something like 16 years or whatever it is. Playoff run. They're definitely on the decline. I don't feel as strong about them as I have in previous seasons, but I'm still probably one of my favorites for that wild card spot in the East. Um, yeah, my issue is with them, like they're just not very consistent, and probably the next couple teams have been in that boat all season as well. In regards to consistency, but I don't know what to make of this team. Like every time I think they're doing good, they somehow drop the ball, even though I don't know how they've dropped the ball. And then
Hmm.
when I think they're going to be down in the dumps, they recover.
Well, yeah, exactly. They've done it all season. You've been like, oh, maybe this is the year that they finally just fall off and capitulate. And then they go on a massive run. And you're like, okay, cool. The Pittsburgh of old are back. And you're thinking, yeah, all right, they might make one more year of it. They didn't have a great deadline. We said that in our earlier videos. But, this is a team with Sidney Crosby. They can do anything at this point. Um, just takes a little bit of consistency and to pull it together at the right time. So, yeah, I'm definitely interested to see how they finish up the season.
Yeah, and they did get fed off a little bit. Like they lose 2 out of the 3 games against Rangers in a week,
Mm,
and so make take that into consideration as much as you can because some teams just have it over other teams, and so maybe their week was better than what we think it was just because they came against a team that probably has their number um, this season, and we'll have to see how they go on these next 2 weeks.
yeah, for sure.
Alrighty, 15. A team in the same boat, New York Islanders. Um,
Yeah.
I feel like these teams are just neck and neck in regards to where they sit. like if I had to put a team above Penguins, they have to go above Islanders. They're just that close. For me, they did beat the Penguins in the first week. Granted, it was in OT, but you're scraping that extra point. That is very critical for their run. They beat Buffalo. They lose to the Capitals 5-1, which was very, very disappointing. And then this week they go and they lose to LA, win on a back-to-back against Anaheim, and then win San Jose. So pretty much the results you would expect to see.
Yeah, yeah. So they get the job done against the team. I think this is just where they've been all year. They 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 can't really take it to the top teams. They drop a couple of games they probably shouldn't as well, and then they just get the job done against the teams that they should be beating. Their run home is a 50-50. They've got some really tough, high caliber teams, but they've also got some of the lower end teams as well. So, if they do what they should do, in terms of the teams that they're facing, they most likely make the playoffs. It's just a question of can they do that? Can they pick up the points that they should? Because if they do pick those points up, I think they'll wrap their playoff spot up. But yeah, it's going to be a question of can they, because their consistency's been shocking all year.
Yeah, like I said, Penguins, Islanders, basically from P 13, 14 down, it's consistency issues.
Yeah, 100%. All right, moving on to P14. I've got a team we thought would be in the top 16 probably all year. Finally back in the top 16, the Florida Panthers. They're choosing the right time to turn it on. That's all I can say.
Yeah, they've turned it on. +6 for both of us. It looks like we've done the exact same thing. And like I said, they've turned it on the right time. I'm not too sure what triggered the turn on to get them going. They scored 9 against Montreal, 7 in the first period, breaking a franchise record. They beat New Jersey. Basically playing 2 minutes of hockey, and New Jersey just doing New Jersey things. I don't even know if it's
Just
just flop.
capitulated for
Yep.
2 minutes.
Yeah, that's New Jersey, and it's been their floor for probably 10 plus years. Um,
I know.
but they do some, a nice win against Vegas, and they get the OT loss on a back-to-back though from the Chicago win against the Jets. So very good results. Very good teams that were beaten. They're on the move. They're looking good, and they turn it on the right time. And I'll be interested to see if they keep it going for this playoff hunt. They are, like in our power rankings, a little bit stronger right now than the Islanders and the Penguins. But this is another team that has that consistency issue, and hopefully it's not for them in regards to just a little hype train before the playoffs, and they go and capitulate.
Yeah, I mean, this is it, right? It comes down, it's on them. I feel like it's on them because the games they've got remaining heavily favor them realistically. They've got 5 games against playoff teams. 5 games. They've got how many games they got left? They've got seven. They got 13 games left. They've only got 5 against playoff caliber teams. This is completely on Florida. Florida right now with the schedule that they've got and the run home they've got, given the fact that they have, if you look at their games in hand, they've got 2 games in hand on New York Islanders. If they win both those games, they're in front of New York right now. With 8 out of 13 of their games being against low ranked teams, and I'm talking low ranked teams, there's no reason they shouldn't make playoffs. So it's their fate is in their hands. And we've seen what this team can do and how damaging this team can be. So if they can get themselves into a playoff spot, I mean, Boston might have some clenched ass cheeks because yeah, I'm not sure I'd want to come up against the Florida Panthers first week in the uh yeah, first round of the playoffs
Mm.
with the form that they're in at the moment.
No, you're not wrong. I don't think I have too much more to add on them. Um, I guess I'll move on to P13 then. It is the Seattle Kraken.
Oh, yeah,
-3. They
yeah,
were
I've
in the
got
top 10.
yeah. I had them in the top 10 as well. So a little bit of a fall, but still really liking these guys. Like I've got him at P12, but I think we both still really like these guys. Um, and given the year they've had, yeah, I
Yeah.
think any Kraken fan would take any spot in the top 16 at this point.
Yeah, they like win 3, lose 4 in the past 2 weeks, but they are still 6-3-1 the last 10. They started off really strong in regards to beating Colorado in OT, beating Anaheim, losing to Ottawa by a goal, and go to OT loss against Dallas. It's commendable, probably besides the Anaheim game. But then it kind of falls apart. They lose to Dallas. They OT win against San Jose, then they lose to Edmonton. So it's like they need to, I would say, compete more against teams like Dallas and Edmonton if they wanted to be in that top 10. And losing that game to Anaheim definitely hurts. So I winning that game, losing the game to Ottawa, sorry, not Anaheim, definitely hurts. So yeah, I don't know what to make of this team. I feel like this is probably the perfect spot for them and where they belong. They've been fluctuating in the top 16, but they've been one of the least consistent of the teams that are above this one. So that's why I've got them at 13, even though it
Yeah,
wasn't a bad week.
I reckon wild card spot is pretty accurate for these guys. Mm,
Yeah,
yeah,
I I think so too.
I'm around that mark
Yeah,
for sure.
you got
All
no
right,
budget add already. Awesome.
no, no, nothing else to add. Let's move on to P13. I've got a team that well, they're not in a freaking wild card spot. They're actually top of their division, but it's the Dallas Stars.
That's probably
I
a bad
just
call then, isn't it?
ah
I've
well, unless you've
I've
got
got
them
them
in your top
11.
10,
Nah, they're
I
they're
was gonna
knocking on the
say,
door, but they don't move for me.
yeah, I know they've turned it on a little bit since they had that just massive shit show of whatever that was. But yeah, I need to see a little bit more from them. They lose to Vancouver, they get smacked by Edmonton. They had that massive win against Buffalo, which was amazing, 10-4. But yeah, I think I need to see a little bit more from them. I still have quite high hopes for them. I think they're a reasonably good team. But after that capitulation, whatever it was, losing to bloody Columbus, Chicago, Vancouver, I kind of need to see a little bit more from them.
Yeah, like I mean, they're 7-3 in the last 10. Like it's a really good record. Um,
Mm,
like they do lose the games to teams like Edmonton, but Edmonton is a strong team. Like I don't know, they've been sound. They win 4, lose 3 over these 2 weeks. It's I don't know. They destroy Buffalo. They lose to Calgary by 1 goal, then they go and beat them by in OT. So the only flaw in their week is the Vancouver game, in my opinion, and I can't hold it back from them, especially with the record they have. I still think they're one of the strongest in the West, in the Central. Sorry, besides obviously teams we haven't talked about in Colorado and Minnesota, but yeah, like it's still interesting that they're on top of their division. Yeah, it's we have them where they are. It's kind of fascinating, isn't it? And it kind of shows where the Central and the West have been. Um,
hmm
but this team was previously in our power rankings. If 5 to 10, somewhere in that range. And I feel like that's where they should be. And I think they're getting back to it.
Yeah, I definitely think they can finish the year in the top 10. I definitely do feel that way, but yeah, they just haven't. I don't think. some of the teams above them, they've been outshining. So it was very hard for me to have them any sort of higher. But yeah, given how they finish, depending on how they finish up, they 100% could be in the top 10 before it's all over.
Alrighty. Guessing moving on to number 12, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Right. Yeah,
Uh,
I've got them at number 11. Yeah,
so yeah,
first one out of my top 10.
so both these teams don't move for me. They win five, lose three out of eight games. They OT lose to Vegas. They got completely destroyed by Carolina at the start of the week, 6-0, and only had 14 shots. It's not really great for a team that's vying for that top 10 position. Then they get the lose to the Jets. Then they get back-to-back games in regards to the New Jersey Devils, and they win both of them. I'd question, even though they win 4-1 against Devils, I'd question that win more than the shootout win just because of some refereeing decisions that I've seen in the game. And I've seen that in other games throughout the whole entire season. And it irks me. It really does. But moving on from that, they then beat Montreal. So they're playing good. It's just, watching the New Jersey Devils games more closely because I'm a fan. I didn't think they were overzealously amazing. I feel like this is kind of where they're at, and some fortunate calls or non-calls in regards to those games kind of led to some of momentum and why they get that 4-1 win.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think there was some dubious calls, obviously. The the no goal call, making it two, which would have made it 2-0, and then they go and immediate like they go and score a shorthanded goal. That probably changes the entire game, right? Like if the Devils are 2-0 up, they probably don't push as hard on the power play. That shorthanded goal attempt just doesn't come up. But yeah, look, they still get the results. I still think they're quite a strong team. This is the potency of them. I don't think they outplayed the Devils in either of those games, but when given the opportunity, they bury it. And that's the strength of this side, is that they don't need a lot to kill you, right? They don't need a lot to take it away from you. And I think that's where they're going to be potent. Do I think that they're at their best? No. Um, but they don't really need to be at the moment, right? We saw them on a bit of a slide, but there's not a team that's going to take that third spot away from them. So the only thing they're really playing for at this point is home ice advantage against Toronto. So
Yeah, I, I I don't think they'll go far in playoffs. Honestly, from watching them, I know they're not at their best, and I know at their best they can be crazy. But I'm not convinced. I don't think I know Vasilevsky's a playoff goalie, and he plays better in the playoffs than he does during this regular season. But I'm not feeling it from him. I don't know what it is. I feel like something's a little off there, and I don't feel like he's going to produce what he has done in the past. That's just my opinion and my prediction. But that's how I'm feeling at the moment with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm not fully sold on them.
yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me either, to be honest. I mean, they've yeah, like you can only do so much, right? You've been in three straight Stanley Cup. You've won two and lost one. It's going to be a pretty big ask to make it a fourth. It's a pretty big ask to even get to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they're the ones who hand Toronto their first, you know, first round win in what seems like forever. But yeah, there's still a team that could do anything. You just don't know.
Oh, I'll just say, like, if I was a team, I know you don't want to do it, but like, if Vasilevsky gets injured, the team's basically done. Like, they've ridden him for 52 out of the 69 games. He's Elliot Bryan's only or Brian Elliott is below 900, concedes over 3 goals per game. So that is the big flaw. If they can't ride him, then I don't feel like they got any their sail to ride, take them where to go. But anyway, starting off in the top 10.
Starting off in the top 10. Yep. Can't remember who was 10th. Yep, that's right. I thought I might have had these two teams the other way around, but no, it is this way. I have the Edmonton Oilers. You made a statement before of this team is pretty strong. I just wanted to retract that and say this first line is pretty strong,
This power play line is pretty strong. um,
pretty much. But hey, they're getting the results and they're getting wins. You know, they're racking them up. So you can't you can't hate it too much. They've won in the last 10 games, I think, or 9 games, they've won seven. They've gone 7-2-0.
hmm
So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like you said, you can't hate it too much. Like McDavid's doing crazy things, putting up goals galore. Trying to break all the records really in regards to goals for a
Mhm.
season, and like it's all good breaking milestones and stuff like that, but you want to be able to compete um in the playoffs and stuff. I'm still not sold on their goaltending. I am definitely not sold on Darnell Nurse. Even if they do make playoffs, I feel like he's the what costs it. And then you'll probably have McDavid trying to do too much by himself, and then probably cost some important goals as well, just because he's trying to carry that team on his shoulders with a couple others. And look, I'm loving what I'm seeing right now. I'm loving watching McDavid do his thing, and basically that power play unit lines members doing what they're doing. Drysaitl's being amazing, and look, there's a lot to love and watch that line. But I'm not watching a team like we said. It's like Montreal. It's like I wouldn't say Arizona because Arizona is more of a team, but it's just watching that one line in regards to
Mhm.
competing, and it's beautiful what they do, but it hurts me watching a team game played that way.
Oh, like you just look at their points total. Like Connor McDavid pretty much Connor McDavid and Draisaitl from sixth position down. I'm pretty sure they actually outscore them. Like even you could potentially even add Darnell Nurse into that, and they potentially outscore the entire team. Like they've got 238 points combined. Then you've got Nugent Hopkins and Hyman. And then after that, your next best is Darnell Nurse at 36, Bouchard at 29, and
hmm
then everyone else. Like no one else is really contributing,
I would
which
say
is why, yeah.
they did get good production from Evander Kane. Um,
Oh yeah, look, so
yeah.
Kane, I would put their top five. I would take Darnell Nurse out, and I'd go. You've got McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, and Evander Kane.
Mm,
Those five are your best production players. So you've almost got two top forward lines.
yeah.
But and Kane does. Kane makes them so much better. So now that he's like back, um, it's good for them. But again, it just comes down to they've really only got that one and a half lines and that power play line. So just don't take penalties against them. We've said it's easier said than done, but yeah, I mean, McDavid can do McDavid things. It's so much fun to watch, and Jesus Christ, he's gonna hit 150 points this year, which is just incredible. But I just don't know if it'll do anything come playoffs. McDavid can do anything, right? He's a magician, but ultimately, I don't know if it gets them a Stanley Cup.
Yeah. Um, and just one last thing in regards to that. It was just like we're talking about the power play. Like you look at Leon Draisaitl, he has 52 um points on the power play. He has 104 points. So literally 50% of his points are power play. Almost 50% of Connor McDavid's power play. Uh, I know it's hard with this league in regards to not taking penalties, especially against these quality players. But if you're able to stay out of the box, and I know with this officiating, it's basically impossible. Um, but if you're able to stay out of the box, you basically win the game. Alrighty.
Yeah, well, exactly, right? You don't go to the power play against them and you don't have to worry because 5-on-5, they're you're literally cutting down half of their goals
Mm,
if you stay out of them.
alrighty. Moving
So,
on to number 9, I have team moving down 2 positions. It's the Minnesota Wild.
wow, how long has this been going? Oh no, we had a difference with Dallas, that's right. But yeah, I was like, wow, we've had a lot of similarities this week for sure.
Yeah,
But yeah,
they haven't been far
Minnesota,
off, have they?
nah, not at all.
Um, yeah, in regards to this, they win half their games. Started off a shootout loss to Calgary. The other losses were in regards to an OT loss against Arizona, and then it was if I just get it here, was the Boston game, losing 5-2. So out of those two losses, they get a point, and that's just how they've been. Just scraping along. They've had point streak going on. I think it was like a 14 point streak until Boston ruined it. And how dare you, Boston? They seem to ruin everything this year for everyone. But yeah, it's just how it's been. But team's been running on well. I've just definitely in my top 10. Been one of the less consistent teams in this top 10, but I'm liking what I'm seeing. If Boston's really the only team that takes away points from you, then you're in good standing.
Oh, for sure. I think, yeah, these guys are definitely a team that's, that they're not going to get kicked out of the playoffs at this point. They definitely got something to prove. Like you said, 14 game point streak. If Boston's the one who's ending that, you're doing something right. Um, but it also just shows that they're in just about every game, right? And the game before that streak started, they lost, but they lost by a goal. So they're in pretty much every game they play at the moment, which is a really positive thing because as long as you're in games, you give yourself every chance of winning them, especially when it comes down to playoff hockey. Um, so yeah, look, I like what they're doing. They're doing it at the right time. So yeah, we'll see how they finish up.
Alrighty.
All right, let's move on to P8. A team that they're doing a lot of good things. They're beating the teams that they should, but yeah, for me, I couldn't move them up any further than this. I've got them Vegas Golden Knights at number 8,
Alrighty. I've got them at P7.
one up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
look,
one up.
I to me they could be anywhere from like 5 down, yeah, down to as low as they could be lower than Minnesota realistically. But um yeah, it's that tight between these teams, I think, at the moment. Um but I like what they're doing. They're playing good hockey. The loss against Calgary was a bit of a shit show. Um and sort of, held me off of moving them up. But yeah, look, I don't mind what they're doing at the moment. They're playing reasonable hockey, which is nice. They're competing against the teams they should be competing against. So yeah, nothing nothing really bad to say about these guys at the moment.
Yeah, they've just been competing in every game. Besides that Calgary game, so one blemish in a long week. But 6 out of 7 um is not bad. They win 5 out of the 7. I think they're playing great hockey. They're competing against anybody and everybody they come up against. They shut out Carolina 4-0. They beat Tampa in OT. But yeah, like I said, it is just that blemish after Calgary. But I don't punish it too heavily. But you still got to punish it already.
Yeah,
Um, on to P8 for me. Is the New York Rangers.
yeah. I thought that's where we would have a swap.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I've got them just one up.
I just had Vegas above the prior, and they've basically both done the same thing over the 2 weeks. Rangers only losing one game, but they played one less game. They went to shootout against Montreal, which I didn't like that they went to shootout. They went to OT against Buffalo. So they had to go. and then they go OT lose against Penguins. That is their one and only loss though. Then they beat Washington, Penguins, and then Penguins again. So they fed off Penguins, getting 5 out of 6 points, and then they beat a lower Washington. It's my I guess my issue is that they went to shootout and OT against Montreal and Buffalo, and Buffalo's been on the slide, and Montreal is Montreal.
Yeah, look, I still think that this Rangers side can be extremely dangerous. Um, but yeah, it's this top 10. I mean, honestly, yeah, they could this from like I said from what probably six, five, six, maybe to 10. You could sort of swap and change a lot of these teams. Um, but yeah, look, I still think New York Rangers are a really deadly side. They're going to be interesting to come up against in playoffs. I think their experience from last year will help carry them. And I think if Shesterkin can turn it on at the right time, they're going to be a very hard team to stop.
Yeah, I agree.
All
Alrighty.
right, on to P6. I've got team I just didn't think were going to be here at all. Um, I did not like the way they were playing at the start of the year. I thought it was absolutely shocking hockey, even though it was getting them wins. But they've cleaned up a lot, and it's the big reason why they are where they are. It's the Los Angeles Kings. You there?
Yeah, yeah, I'm still here. My mic must have cut out. Sorry. So yeah, so they moved down one position for me. They're a P6, and look, there's nothing bad in regards to them. They've been playing amazing hockey. Like I said, it's surprising where they are. They only moved down for me because Colorado have been Colorado, and look, like I said, they had a good week. They win 4 out of 6, beat Washington, they beat Colorado. So yeah, try and tell my rankings that. Then then they lose in shootout to the Nashville Predators, and then beat Islanders, they beat the Jackets, but then they go and shootout lose against the Vancouver. So they're competing in all the games they're playing. I almost didn't punish them with Colorado, but I just think Colorado is basically the Stanley Cup team that won that Stanley Cup. That's what they're looking like. So nothing on LA. I could see them going. Geez, if they keep this momentum going or how they're going, as high as number two, um, in the future, because they are knocking on that door, and it's very surprising.
It is 100%. Like I was expecting them to fall off at some point. I was expecting them to still be a wild card team. But I wasn't expecting them to literally be uh, their equal top in the West. Like that's how good they've been. They're not fighting for a wild card spot. They are literally equal best. So yeah, to me, it's a great year from them. Um, and yeah, you're right. Like if they keep this up, they could 100% move into yeah, even that top three.
Alrighty, P5, top five. We've got a team moving down a bit. I was a little bit higher on last time. It is the New Jersey Devils. Uh, Honestly, still playing amazing hockey. All these teams
Hmm.
basically in the top 10 are playing amazing hockey, but they're just their own worst enemy. And that, like, their depth D in regards to Severson is their biggest flaw. It's interesting they're not playing their other defenders that are more defensive over him. And he's basically being the Achilles heel of the Devils. It's kind of like the Darnell Nurse situation for Edmonton, I'd feel like. But yeah, like I said, they're their own worst enemy. They'll outplay their opponents, but then they'll just make some stupid mistake and that'll cost them a goal or two. And that's just seems to be the trend. But they got firepower like there's no tomorrow. Like they're ranked five in the power rankings for a reason, and they're definitely one of the most feared teams going into this end of the season and into the playoffs. And look, I could only probably say I'd floor them in regards to having Severson on the third pairing, and also just how good will their goaltending tandem be when it comes into playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's probably the issue with them because you talk about last their last five losses against five really good teams: Vegas, Toronto, Tampa twice, and Florida. They were the better teams in pretty much all five of those games. Um, Vegas, they absolutely lit them up, and just Aiden Hill saved their ass, and a couple of mistakes end up in the back of the net. Toronto, they were controlling the game, they were doing everything right, and then all of a sudden, within 3 minutes, the game's over. They concede two goal. There, 2 minutes again. They concede two goals in 2 minutes late in the third, and they go from winning the game to losing it in regulation. They do this. The Tampa Bay game, that was an interesting one, but they did it against Florida today. They were 2-0 up. Florida played well. I wouldn't say the Devils dominated the game. I think it was a pretty even game throughout. But they were 2-0 up. They were controlling the game. And then within 2 minutes, they were 3-2 down. And it was good night Dick in the third. So yeah, they're their own worst enemies. They need to tighten those defensive lapses up. And it does come down to how good can Vanacek and Akira Schmid be. Um, Obviously, if Blackwood comes back, maybe. Um, but yeah, they're my biggest concerns around there. I don't think I've got any issues with their firepower. Their firepower is fantastic. Their forwards all do the right thing. Their penalty kill is amazing. Um, they're doing a lot of good things. They just slip up, those little slip ups against good teams, and it costs them big time. So yeah, they need to tidy that up before playoffs. Otherwise it will come to bite them in the ass.
Yeah. Alrighty, your pick four.
All right, on to P4. I've got well, the other team that they're fighting for in that top 1-2 spot, the Metro, the Carolina Hurricanes. It's amazing to think that they got shut out twice in 2 days, and they're still only fourth. But
Mm.
that's just how strong these guys have been, right?
Yeah, like you said, they've been extremely strong. They've been strong all season, Carolina. It's definitely a little race between them and New Jersey, and they're both having little hiccups, but at the end here, but nothing they can't fix. They start off, win 6-0 against Tampa. Great win, completely dominant. They go 4-3 shootout win against Montreal, but they were still dominant. 1-0 win against Flyers, bit too close. And then they go, and like you said, get shut out by Vegas. And then they go and get shutouts by New Jersey. So I'll just leave it at that. Like, really good games. They go beat Jets, lose to Toronto. They lose to other teams in the top five, which is my concern for them in New
Mhm.
Jersey and Toronto. But they still win the games that you'd expect them to win, and that's the team they are. They're very consistent.
Yeah, and they might have found themselves a bit lower if they didn't score with 1 second to go today.
Hmm.
But yeah, look, they get the 2 points against Philly in the end, and at this point in the season, doesn't matter how you get those 2 points as long as you get them, right? So yeah, look, I still think they're extremely strong, but they do need to work on their performances against fellow Eastern Conference playoff teams that they're most likely going to come up against at some point.
Yeah, and I think it's the same situation as New Jersey. Though New Jersey did get the forward and Timo Mo, but I feel like my biggest concern with these two teams is their goaltending and can they
Mhm.
prove it in playoffs. Um, Whereas a team like something like the Rangers, I feel like with Shesterkin, they've got more of a sound goalie in regards to playoffs.
Yeah, 100%.
Alrighty, P3 I have the leaf, the maple leaf.
Oh, you've done it. That's
Yeah,
insane. All
I,
right.
I sat on it for a long time, and it was the other way
Cool.
around. Leafs were at two, but I sat on it
Okay.
for a long time.
Cool.
But
Because I
yeah,
yeah, I made that call real early, and I was like, nah, I have to. I like it, and yeah, I'm surprised you made the same call. That's cool.
yeah,
But
it was
yeah, Toronto.
yeah, it was basically a coin flip for me. Like this top five is all really solid. You know, they win four out of their six. They beat quality teams like New Jersey. They beat Edmonton. Like this is a really strong team. The big blemish was the Buffalo game. Shootout loss to Colorado, a team we haven't spoken about yet, and that is why they are at three. Um, Not so much because of that, but it was just that little edge. But then they go and beat Carolina and Ottawa in shootout. So they beat three out of the four top teams. And I think that is why they are where they are. They're definitely a top three team. Um, Honestly, if it wasn't for the other teams being just so crazy good, I would have them probably at number one or number two.
Mhm.
But it's just that competitive in this top five.
Yeah, for sure. I've been big on Toronto most of the year. I think, yeah, look, I think there is geared to go past the first round this year more than ever. So, and the scary thing for me is if they can get past the first round, they lift the hoodoo off of them. They lift that massive weight that's sitting on every single one of their shoulders, and the sky's the limit. Like it would not surprise me. And Toronto fans, don't get too excited yet. You still need to get out the first round. But it would not surprise me if we see the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Stanley Cup final. I'm not going to say winning the Stanley Cup, but in the Stanley Cup final if they get out the first round. Because I just feel like that pressure and the team they have, they can 100% make the Stanley Cup final. All they've got to do is get out that first round. And I would not be surprised if it happens and they go on a massive run.
Mm. I'd just say the East is more of a coin flip. Like my issue is
It
that
is.
if it's not the Avs winning the cup from the West, I'd be honestly very angry. I feel like that's probably one of the only teams, maybe with Dallas, because they've just been more consistent through this season. And I'm not a big fan of Vegas, but they have been a consistent team as well. Um, but if it wasn't really the Avs or Dallas, I'd be pretty angry. And even if at Dallas, I'd be pretty angry because I feel like just like look where they are in the power rankings right now, and Boston,
Hmm.
New Jersey, Carolina, Toronto, like these teams have been at the top for a long time, and
Yeah,
that's it's hard. So I like I said, I feel like they could do it, but I feel like every game going up into that final will basically be a coin flip with how strong it is.
yeah, for sure.
And
All right,
number
moving
two,
on to number two. Now, the they're the reigning Stanley Cup champions for a reason, and yeah, I just think they are turning it on at the right time. Their last 30 games, they are 22-5-3. 22-5-3. They are just one of the most informed teams in the competition right now. And yeah, they're going to be scary. They are gearing themselves up for another playoff run. And yeah, it's scary to think because they've sort of heated in that wild card spot for so long. The last 30 games, they've turned it on to the point that, well, they're 3 points away from Dallas, the top spot, and they've got 2 games in hand. So, yeah, I honestly do think this is probably the second best team in the comp right now.
well, it's crazy because like they got all the injuries back and then they just turned it on, but they're still not even full strength. Like Gabriel Landeskog's on the long term, Eric Johnson's
Hmm.
injured. You can even throw Darren Helm in there if you wanted to, but like you're losing your captain, and yet they're still this strong. So they've only got to get stronger. We covered it in them previous videos that our biggest issue is they didn't get that second line center. Um, the way they're going, do they even need it? um, but yeah, like that's probably my only concern with them. And then you know how good can Georgiev and Francois be during the playoffs? That would be my next big question, as Georgiev is pretty untested during playoffs, and um, what's his name, Francois has been through the playoffs a couple times, but is basically 900. So that is my concern. They have won a cup with mediocre goaltending before, so they could do it again.
And that's yeah, that's honestly that is the only thing that I'll put out there is they didn't have an out and out superstar. I know Washington paid a lot of money for Kemper, 5 mil, 6 mil, whatever they paid. Uh, but he wasn't an out and out superstar. He wasn't the reason they won. So I'm not too concerned about their goaltending because I think their team is that strong that they can sort of cover that. But yeah, it's scary to think how good they are at the right time. Um and I think yeah, we with that we move on to the number one spot, which surprise, surprise, they've had an absolute just probably the shittest period of their entire season, and they're still number one. Like I wanted to put someone ahead of them because of the losses they've had. They lose to Detroit and Chicago back to back.
hmm
But who do you put in front of them?
Nah, like
Like,
it's hard to. It's like even if they lost the rest of the games, it'd be hard to. Just for the fact, like you'd just be like, oh, they're just resting for the playoffs now. like,
mm,
um, like it's hard
right?
to criticize this team at this point. Like they're 11 points clear of second in the league. It's not even their division or something. It's the league. Um,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, it's just been pretty much staple for them. I think they've done good during the trade deadlines, bringing Orlov. Did good at the start of the year, bringing Zaka. Like there's just not much to floor here. You just hope that maybe they can rest players. If resting works, I'm personally a person that likes to just keep playing to the end, go through into the playoffs. But I understand, players you want to rest for injuries or little knockups. But
Yeah,
I could definitely see next week, with how Colorado, Toronto, and the other teams have been, that they get knocked down this number one spot, especially if they continue this little hiccup, if we can call it that.
yeah. Yeah, it's tough, isn't it, right? Like you just it's a hiccup, but it's also oh, they secured playoffs. They can't really lose top spot, or it would take one hell of a fall down to lose top spot. So, yeah, do you sort of start taking it a bit easier? Sharing the ice time with some of the lower, like third, fourth line. Um, yeah, to me, I agree with you. I do not prefer to rest and stop because I feel like you lose a bit of momentum. But I think any players that do have slight niggles probably need a few games rest. It's probably now the best time to do that, and get them as fresh as possible rather than continue to play them and them have to play through the playoffs with that niggle. Um, so yeah, look, I think they're in one of the best positions at the moment. They've got some time to evaluate where their players are, give players that need a rest the rest, and then yeah, probably gear up for I reckon probably the last 5 games. You really want to sort of turn it on, get some momentum, get into the groove, and find your winning ways, and then hit the ground running for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that the biggest advantage for them, in a sense, is they can divert a lot of their scouting and talent towards who they're going to play in the playoffs now. And this goes for Toronto, um, as well with Tampa. Like they can just devote so much time to it now, in preparing for these games. So I think Boston's in the best seat. They've been strong. Um, I think it's probably one of the most complete teams, not even just on paper, but just how they play. And look, the coaching's done good in regards to it in building this team on the ice and the way it's worked. General managers made good moves. The only concern for me is that they can only go down from here.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
been such a high that any little hiccup is going to feel like a big drop. So
Well, exactly right. Like, and as I said, right now they're geared up. Right now, as it stands, they're playing Pittsburgh. But one little move, and they're playing Florida. And I just, with the way Florida are playing at the moment, it'll be an interesting game. I still think Boston are the better side, but we all know what Florida can do. We all know the firepower Florida has. So yeah, I definitely feel like they could give Boston a run for their money if they come up against them. And if I was Boston, I would be wanting to play either a New York Islanders or Pittsburgh at this point.
yeah, I'd personally pick the Islanders over the three, um, just so I don't have to deal with the Crosby factor. And like I said, if Florida are the team they are when they if they do make the playoffs. But yeah, that's our 32. Some big movements because we missed a week. Um, but yeah, like the video, leave a comment below what you think. There will be more videos coming in the future, uh, as you know, real life sorts itself out. And then don't forget to subscribe and leave the notifications on so you can get notified when our videos go live. And until then, see you guys soon.
Okay, guys.